Hello everybody. So another video on KULR today because we got some news and there's a lot of chatter about this reverse stock split online and people don't like it. They say sell, sell, sell. They get mad at the management. And the question in this video is do I want to add more to KULR? What do I think about the stock split? Is it a bad thing? Followers of the channel probably have an idea of what I'll say, but let's get started. So folks, what's going on with KULR? It's down 22% in after hours. These news, typically you release them after market. I think it's a good idea to release it over the weekend because we have the weekend to digest the information, and then on Monday, who knows where the stock is going to open. What happened? What is it that is happening? Well, KULR just announced a 148 reverse stock split. So they want the stock to not be trading at $1 anymore. They want the stock to trade at $8 or $7 or $6. Why do they do the split? It's very clear. They do the splits for institutional participation, for long-term shareholder value, in anticipation of the addition to the Russell 3000, and for inclusion in institutional portfolio, and also for inclusion, for buying by trading firms and trading platforms of all sorts, which discriminates against stocks that are less than $5. We'll get into that in a second. When your stock is less than $5, you usually can't have margin. If you don't have margin, it's like you have a house in a street and you can't finance it, right? The house that can't get a mortgage is going to be much less expensive than the house where you can have a mortgage. And right now, KULR at $1 is that house that cannot get a mortgage. It is that house that is not eligible for margin, hence why it is cheaper. So what are some of the reasons why we want to trade above $5? We want to trade above $5 because the market is all, in its grand thinking, it's all about, dollar stock bad or penny stock bad. So it's all about perception. Well, you have some of that's rule-based. So, for example, to stay listed on the exchanges, you gotta be above $1. Otherwise, you risk being delisted. And so, a reverse stock split is important to stay listed on the exchanges. That was not necessarily the situation of KULR just yet. But institutional investors often view low-price stocks as speculative, just as a blanket statement. A lot of investors in their charter cannot invest in stocks that are less than $5. They are deemed to be penny stock, and there's a stigma associated with it. And then you have broker rules, which limit people's ability to buy penny stocks. You have the SEC, which flags them, like names them penny stocks. And you have, of course, brokers that give you a 100% maintenance margin requirement because they're quote-unquote penny stock. And in fact, if you go to the main brokers, Robinhood is one of the main brokers, SoFi a bit of a smaller broker, but you can see stocks trading below $5 are excluded for margin. And of course, a stock on which you can't do margin is going to be a cheaper stock, just like the house where you can't get a mortgage on it is going to be a cheaper house. This is the same at SoFi. SoFi, for a stock to be eligible on margin, you've got to be at least $5. I assume it is the same. Well, 99% sure it's the same at every single broker. That's how it works. That's the rule. So, anyways, to me, this is a knee-jerk reaction. This is a classic reverse stock split bad, sell, sell, sell type of thinking without digging any deeper into it. It doesn't help that there's a lot of shorts on this stock. There's a lot of very poorly researched articles that, simply attack KULR. I've read a few of them preparing for this video. Like the one I read about an hour ago was saying, KULR just developed a robotic arm or a robotic platform. They didn't develop it, okay? It's a licensing, but they just write in the pseudo-analysis from a pseudo-analyst with like thousands and thousands of people. They write that they developed the bionic thing. No, it's a German company. They're importing it to the US from Germany. Totally different. To tell you the kind of inaccuracies. This is not an easy stock to research. I don't pretend to do a good job at researching it, but to me, it's what I see is good. What I see is good enough. But sometimes people just write superficial articles about a stock, about any stocks. I'm sure I'm guilty of maybe doing superficial analysis on stocks I don't like. I try to be as objective as I can. Anyways, I ramble. Going back to the stock split reaction, reverse stock split bad type of thinking in the classic grandeur of a market. I want to point out that this instantly reminded me of the SoFi stock split incident, Hysteria, where SoFi actually didn't do it. They ended up not doing it so much that the retail investor got mad at SoFi for doing that. And that was 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, when that happened, all of the YouTubers were really complaining about it. They were very, very mad at management, talking about the reverse stock split. And I remember when that news was announced for SoFi, which they ended up not doing the split, but when that news was announced, the stock reacted. I can't find the chart exactly, but the stock reacted. And then you see now, almost 3 years later, the stock is a 3x, right? So from it was trading in just under $5 to now under $14, under $15, really under $15 right now. So to me, this is going to be the same type of event. These are very volatile assets, and it's just the nature of the game, it's the nature of the beast. If someone wants a Bitcoin Treasury company that is not very volatile, this is going to make people roll their eyes. But if you want a BTC Treasury company that is not very volatile, then look at MicroStrategy. I mean, I don't know. It sounds crazy to say that MicroStrategy is not that volatile, but strategy is not nearly as volatile as it used to be. Strategy in the early days used to be just as volatile as a KULR is right now. So let's talk about the price to NAV. It now got much cheaper. So I'm assuming the 22% drop that we got in after hours yesterday, I'm assuming that holds. That means we would have a new enterprise value of $267 million for KULR. Price to NAV, they have 96 million of Bitcoin. And keep in mind, it's kind of a double whammy for KULR because Bitcoin's down from the beginning of the week. The Middle East tensions are not helping the price of Bitcoin. They're not helping risk assets right now. So it's kind of a double, like a double whammy. Like it's two things hitting that stock at the same time, which means that the price to NAV dropped from a 4 to a 2.78 in very little time, in next to no time. I firmly believe that 2.78x price to NAV is fully due to the space battery business. As I've said before in my videos, there are stocks like KULR who trade very expensively on a price to sales basis, similar price to sales to KULR, something like a 20 or 25. They trade this high because battery stocks are hot, and space batteries are even more complicated than regular batteries. These batteries have to handle extreme temperatures. It's a big issue for batteries. It's not that easy of a technology to copy, and you don't win these contracts with NASA that easily. And the fact that this stock had a following before that had nothing to do with Bitcoin, really keeps me confident in the fact that there's a lot of investors who own it for the tech, who own actually the stock for the tech, for the space tech. So anyways, the price to NAV right now is 2.78, and that 1.78 extra over 1x Bitcoin, right? That 1.78 extra to me is all because of the space batteries. That's my view on KULR. But because of the underlying business, they're trading at this very high price to NAV, which they can monetize. 2.78 is still excellent. It's a full 1x more than MicroStrategy. And so they can monetize this through the ATM. Keep in mind, this is a stock that has achieved a BTC yield of 260% since the beginning of the year. And they've just formalized the 300 million ATM. This has been formalized. They're going to ATM on that stock, right? Especially as the S&P 3000 inclusion, the Russell 3000 inclusion comes, right? And so the question is, 300 million ATM, that means you have 300 million coming through the door. Of course, at a 2.78, what does it mean? It means you're printing $1, you're selling $1 for 2.78. 1.78 accretes. The point that I'm trying to make is that if the bulk of that money is invested in Bitcoin, they could potentially triple their Bitcoin bag after that ATM is over. I have no idea how long it's going to take them to do this ATM, maybe a year, but a year of this ATM could triple your Bitcoin buy. So the months to cover MNAV month to cover, the metric of Adam back, in my view, looks really good on a stock like KULR. I mean, this stock is really being slept on. I have no idea why. That's why I took a gamble on it. I'm happy to take a gamble on it, a calculated gamble. But I really don't sweat it. It's a battleground stocks between the shorts and the longs. It's a battleground stocks between the people who own the stock for the BTC Treasury versus the people who own the stock for the technology. A lot of the former shareholder base seems to say, oh, you got to sell because of a Bitcoin Treasury company. Well, I say I want to own this stock for the very reason that they have a BTC Treasury company. And that's the cushion that gives me confidence to investing in a company which normally would be too early. Like KULR is a cafe wood type stock. It's EBITDA negative. It's a cafe wood type stock. It's not it's not a BTD type stock, right? But I'm comfortable owning it because of a BTC Treasury company. I believe most companies will have a BTC Treasury company down the road at some point, right? At some point, most companies, in my view, will have a BTC Treasury company. There's a lot of things they can do with Bitcoin on a balance sheet. They could borrow against the Bitcoin to finance the space battery business. Like I said, a lot of battery companies trade at lofty valuations. The one, and I understand this one is entirely different because they're building a manufacturing plant, but I can't help thinking about Enovix and the valuation of Enovix. If you remember my other videos, I showed you valuation of two other companies very comparable to KULR trading at similar price to sales without the Bitcoin. So anyways, what am I doing? Well, I might add more to my options position. I wasn't fully done. That's the only reason why I'm adding more. I wasn't fully done. I was still in the midst of building the position. So it's a gift. It's a gift. I would love to add 1/3 more. It's a gift at this point, in my view. This, in my view, is an asymmetric bet. The way I look at this investment is if my options go to zero, I really don't care because it's a gamble that I want to take, and so it's up to you to do. You decide for you. But I think the leaps that I was buying, these leaps I was buying between $85 a contract to $95 a contract. These leaps for January 2015, 2027 KULR call options for 50 cents. 50 cents was the strike price for these leaps. I think they're going to be trading at about $60 or $65, $70, maybe not even not that low because the liquidity is not that high on this line. So let's assume you can get them on Monday for $65 a contract. The returns are insane if this stock goes to $5, and they're even more insane if this stock goes to $10. And keep in mind, this stock in December 2026, 2024, so 6 months ago, this stock was trading at $4.80. $4.80. And this volatility, is vitality, right? As Saylor says, this is volatility. Investing in a volatile asset is kind of how you achieve a symmetric return. So let's assume it goes back with my leaps here. Let's assume it goes back to a 5. Well, if it goes back to $5, that's a 4x. That's 400%. That's more than 4x. That's 5x. That's 5.5x. Could be a 10x. So, okay. So, of course, that leap looks very much like owning the stock because the leap is in the money. You get even more asymmetric stuff if you get out of the money leaps. But, I wanted to do in the money leaps because at some point I may be interested in selling calls on it. Look, that's the way I did it. I think the options chain is more interesting on this one. Note that it's very rare to have a stock so early in their BTC Treasury company, so early in their BTC Treasury journey to have a stock this early that has options until 2027. We're grateful for the options until 2027. We owe these to the legacy business. We owe these to the fact that this is an established legacy business. A lot of the other BTC Treasury companies don't have, the newer ones, the smaller ones, they don't have an options market where you can get some leverage from the leaps. So I see a lot of great things in this company. Not quite a double down, but I'm adding a little more. And if it goes to zero, don't care. If I'm right, it's between a 5 and a 10x. So put a 50-50 odds on this. I take this bet any day. Does that make sense? That's how asymmetry works. And I think it all depends on your risk appetite. This is why on this channel I don't give any investment advice. It's all about your risk appetite. I'm sleeping well at night with KULR. I'm sleeping well at night. Watch the CEO interviews. I've watched a lot of CEO interviews. He's a smart cookie. That CEO is a smart cookie. And I like that a lot. So anyways, this was not investment advice, not financial advice. You do you. This was only entertainment. Hoping you were entertained. Please like, please subscribe, follow me on Patreon, follow me on X. Thank you for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.